welcome, gents. We're going to talk about places as much as we can, rather than go through the old what you want to do and how many hotels you're going to have in 50 years and that. But let's start with that list of places you're not. Nobody is. Let's look at little places. Liberia. Start with Liberia. Liberia is a lot in the news at the moment. Liberia, it's a little country in the west of Africa, went through a terrible, terrible time with a civil war. Then it was hit by Ebola, has been very stable ever since with, compared to many African countries, terrific governance. Madame has done a great job, but now she's stepping down, and they were voting this week. Are you guys looking at Liberia at all? Tell us about Liberia. Sure. Philippe, I'm going to pick on you.
Do you want me to talk about the places where we are not? Because then you're going to have a long, long speech from me. According to what you said earlier.
Just the short version.
Listen, as you said in your nice introduction, we are a bit the new kid on the block on Africa. We have clear and intention to develop, and in order to develop in a continent as large as Africa, with the resources we have available, we have decided to select a number of countries and a number of brands and concentrate on these countries and these brands, and not to spread ourselves too thin on the entire continent. We do like that in Africa, and we do the same in Europe, and we do the same in other regions. So Liberia, my answer will be not yet. We are not saying we will not do it in the future, but because I think in hotel development we have to look at the long term. We cannot be reactive and say, oh, there is a problem in this country, so we won't go there, and there is another issues in that country. There is issues in every country, if you look at it, even in Northern Europe. So if you start be reactive on the news, you don't develop anywhere, really. So what we do in Africa, we have selected a number of countries, and we decided to develop there and to place our resources in these countries. And Liberia is not part of it.
So you're right, new kid on the block. So you can see what people have been doing in the past. Have you identified the cities that you want to be in, or are you opportunistic? So I'm serious about Liberia. If somebody came to you with a deal in Liberia, would you go for it, or is it on the strategy? Or?
No, it's not on the strategy.
It sounds like Trevor has a deal for us, huh?
Yes, I think so.
Talk afterwards.
There is something. No, we won't go for it. We decided to focus on certain cities and countries, understand these markets, because you mentioned it before. I mean, a lot of deals are signed and never built.
Yeah.
In order to be able to deliver in a market, you have to find the right partners, the right people. It takes a long time to create a trustful relationship with developers, owners, investors. I don't think you can do it if you go from country to country in a big continent like Africa. It's a fascinating continent. I'm so happy to be here in Rwanda, actually, in Kigali, because I think this country has a lot to offer, for example. Some of the neighboring countries as well. I was thinking about Uganda. In East Africa, we look at Nigeria like everybody else, but we have our development manager based there in Lagos, Vivian, that I'm sure you will all meet. We look at Mozambique, we look at countries where we have a chance to deliver. There is another factor that we take in consideration, where we are present with the feeder markets of each country. We want to be able to deliver for our owners with our system, and we need to develop in countries where we can make sure we can deliver. So we look at also feeder markets. I mean by that, from which country of origin are coming the guests in every country, and we make sure that we are able to deliver with this.
Okay, so clear strategy there.
We'll look at Liberia, by the way.
It's mine.
It's your
He's the boss. Yeah.
I just want to stick with these small countries for now, because we often sit here and we talk about Nigeria and South Africa and Kenya. Let's look at these smaller countries that, and we're talking at Sao Tome, Equatorial Guinea, Central African Republic, Liberia, Guinea-Bissau, little countries which very, very rarely are mentioned at these events. So, Mike, you're actually quite new to Africa, nearly a year now on seat with Hilton. If you look at Europe, it's got lots of big countries. I mean, Africa's got lots and lots of little countries. Go on. What do you think about these little countries? Are they targets for you?
Are you going to test me? Test my geography? I'm waiting for you to throw a place at me.
What's the capital of Tanzania?
Dodoma.
Whee! Well
Guess
done.
what?
There's
I've
a few
been
more
there.
where that came from.
And it's got massive potential,
Yeah.
providing the government moves.
Yeah, but we're talking about little countries in
But
West
governments do move, and we saw that in Kazakhstan when Almaty moved to Astana.
Yeah.
And Astana is flooded with luxury hotels now. So these things can happen. It may take 10 years,
good
but
point.
I don't want to diverse.
Good point, focusing on cities that, the capital of Tanzania is officially Dodoma. They're talking about moving the government from Dar es Salaam, which is not the capital, to Dodoma. So interesting. So there's a small city, currently a very small city, where you would definitely be interested in being.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a few sites. I think initially we would definitely do a Hilton Garden in that market.
Right.
If the government moves, the potential's untold. It will, over time, open up.
But let's go back to my little countries. Malabo.
Yep.
I think you're there, aren't you?
We are there already, yeah.
In Malabo. Okay. Liberia, Monrovia.
We have a strategic focus on growth right across the continent.
So any capital city, any city that makes sense.
Absolutely. And before I say where, I'm going to talk about more what in an area. And I think you all saw our announcement last week. Conversions is one aspect of the strategy that we're focused on. So we will look to support. We've launched an initiative for Africa, the Hilton Africa Growth Initiative. We're going to provide funds up to $50 million over the next 5 years to support the conversion of existing hotels.
This is Hilton's balance sheet. This is Hilton's money.
Absolutely, Hilton's money. Covers all areas of the country, capital cities, key commercial centres, secondary and even tertiary markets, resorts. We even think there's opportunity for safari lodges and the likes. It's a model that's worked well for us in Western Europe, particularly with our Doubletree by Hilton brand. But we also have our Curio Collection brand and even potential opportunities for Hilton.
And that investment, could that go anywhere? Could that go to Monrovia?
Absolutely. And we see these smaller markets as being as attractive as the bigger markets like Kenya, where we've just converted an existing hotel that opened last
Paul, you've done a lot of work in the big cities. You're the leader in terms of the pipeline. Can you now start looking at these smaller cities?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I think, like everyone else, we also take a strategic and focused approach. So one of the first things we did was to evaluate these countries and cities to determine when to prioritize what countries. So all the countries on your list were, we'll call it tier 3, tier 4 countries. Now, Monrovia, we are actually quite interested in Monrovia. I'll tell you a challenge we face in the smaller countries is the size of deals often are not exciting enough for us to be able to take on under a management agreement.
In terms of number of rooms, is that? Or?
Yes, exactly, number of rooms. And so ultimately, ideally, you'd want to enter those markets, but what you would likely enter with is a franchise, which, as we know, in these parts of the world are challenging. We are actually quite keen on Liberia, given the historic connection to the US. And so it's a country we're looking at. But other countries like Equatorial Guinea, for us, are off limits for now, based on challenges around transparency.
Okay. Andrew, you've been to small markets.
I've been to
Bamako.
I've been to Monrovia.
Okay.
So,
Best sushi on the West Coast.
it actually is.
It's extraordinary. 3 hotels there all have Japanese restaurants.
And they have amazing sushi.
Yeah.
But for us as Colson Rezidor, if we're going to go into a new country, we ideally don't want to go into a new country with just one hotel.
It's what?
If we're going to go into a new country, we don't want to only go into a new country with a single hotel. So we would need to have a look at that country or that city within that country and have a look and say, do we think we, over a period of time, could actually have more than a single hotel? So if we looked at Monrovia in Liberia and felt that there was really only possibility to do a single hotel, we'd probably not go into that country. If we felt that we could do multiple hotels over a period of time, then it would be something that we would look at and we would consider going in. So if you look at some of...
Does that rule you out of certain markets where you said that's just not going to happen?
Because it's too small, so we don't want to have just one hotel in one country. Ideally, we would like to obviously enter with one hotel and then over a period of time get it to 3 or 4. So if we take of your list, so Lesotho as an example, Lesotho would really regard as a province of South Africa. So even though it is a little country, it really could be serviced as the 10th province of South Africa. So we might look at Lesotho a little bit differently. But so if we looked at Equatorial Guinea, we looked at Liberia, probably not at the moment because I don't think both of them have the ability to do multiple hotels in that country. Where if you take Cameroon, where I don't think any of us are in Cameroon at the moment. Cameroon's a market where you could have... Oh, that's right, yeah.
Been a long time.
That's a market where you could probably have 4 or 5 hotels over a period of time. So that would be a new country that we would want to enter into, where we think we could do multiple deals with multiple brands over a period of time.
I guess airlift must be a question mark for some of these markets. I mean, Sao Tome, it's so difficult to get to Sao Tome, even within West Africa.
Yeah.
The airlift is quite poor.
I think for all of us, I think we're looking at airlift would be sort of one of the political stability and the airlift are the two sort of first things you're gonna really look at.
Okay, let's switch tack and look at the big markets, those that are, according to the data, and Nairobi springs to mind, it looks like they're coming oversupplied. Another one which doesn't feature on the data, I think, is Conakry, possibly Kigali. There's a lot of supply coming in and not enough growth. Do you want to comment, perhaps, Philippe, you're looking at Africa. Does that rule out cities for you?
Not yet. The supply and demand story, we know these cycles very well, and we know every city goes to oversupply and undersupply at a certain point, because normally, if the market is healthy, if the growth in the country is good enough, the demand catch up with the offer. And in nearly every market, we can see these cycles of supply and demand up and down. So and we know the time spent on development in this region could be very high. So I don't want to rule out a city or an area where we can see the growth perspective because of some oversupply, which will not be permanent in my opinion. So it's a bit risky, but this is the view we have. We also, at Wyndham, we are the specialist in mid-market hotels, and we are the world leaders in economy brands. So we want to focus on these segments in particular.
Right.
We can do Wyndham Grands, Wyndhams in the upscale and upper upscale segment, but we want to concentrate on mid-market and economy. And I think that in these two segments, there is some place, even we have to look at oversupply for which segment in each market. And I think in economy and mid-market, we still have some room to grow.
Yeah. Mike, you've been to Nairobi recently, I think, and Hilton had a presence there for goodness knows how long, many years. What's your view of that market, the Nairobi market?
There are some markets which are potentially becoming oversupplied, and the few you mentioned are. The beauty of our conversion strategy is that, we're targeting hotels that are in the market, that are existing, and helping those owners improve their performance by coming into our engine. So with the first 2 hotels that we've signed under this strategy, one was a a new hotel that opened last year in Nairobi, the Amber Hotel. That will convert to a DoubleTree by Hilton. And we've recently signed the Umbumwe Hotel here, which opened last year, and that again will convert to a DoubleTree by Hilton. So they're already existing in these markets. So it's an approach that I think.
So you're not adding rooms. Andrew, you are. You recently opened a very lovely hotel in Upper Hill. And you got a second Radisson Blu opening.
Yeah. We opened a Park Inn earlier this year. We also opened a Park Inn earlier this year.
And a Park Inn?
Yeah. So if we look at Nairobi, I think as a city is moved into being a more mature city, like any other mature city in the world. It's going to go through an undersupply and oversupply sort of situation. We still look at Nairobi as a city that has opportunities, but all our growth is not necessarily always going to be new build. So we also do conversions. So as a company, we want to have sort of probably 40% of our portfolio being conversions and 60% new build. So we happen to be in Nairobi now with 2 brand new hotels, which have both opened within sort of 16 months of each other. We have a third property, which is a Radisson Blu residence, which will also fit into a different market segment, which opens within the next sort of 12 to sort of 18 months as well. But that doesn't mean that we're going to stop looking at Nairobi. Nairobi is the powerhouse of East Africa. There's a lot of opportunity in Nairobi. We've got other brands we'd like to bring to Nairobi, and they won't necessarily always be new build. That we'll also look at takeovers of existing hotels. So for us, across some of the bigger markets where there seems to be this potential sort of oversupply, or it's getting to sort of an equal playing field, we are looking at conversions and being smart about how we actually can bring a brand in under a conversion.
Paula, you've just announced a deal in an emerging market, one of what they used to call CASA, conflict-affected states in Africa, Abidjan.
Yes.
Where there's not been a huge amount of activity. Radisson Blu have opened. I don't think there's any other. There's no Hiltons there, no Hyatts, no Sheratons.
Lots of Accor. Lots of Accor.
Pardon?
Lots of Accor.
Lots of Accor properties. But now
Philippe.
Marriott's done a deal. I think a lot of people have looked at that particular deal. Why Abidjan? What's attracted Marriott to Abidjan?
Well, I think first of all, Côte d'Ivoire, we've been quite aggressive on Côte d'Ivoire over the last 2 years. We are all aware of the challenges they went through in 2010, 2011, and the progress they've made over the last few years. I mean, when you look at infrastructure development and the focused approach they've taken to really growing that economy, diversification. They are one of the biggest agricultural players on our continent for various products, whether it's cocoa, cashew nuts, and so on. And so you have a government in power that's actually thinking and has a roadmap and is actually executing against a plan. So you'll find that it's not just the hotel companies. You have various corporates that moved outside of Côte d'Ivoire during the times of trouble that have relocated. The U.S. Overseas Private Investment Corporation last year opened an office in Abidjan and so on. So for us, Côte d'Ivoire has been on our target list, and I'm very, very happy to say that this year we've signed 3 hotels in Abidjan. Starting from kind of looking at it again last year, we signed in April of this year a Marriott in Plateau, and we just signed the Golf Hotel under conversion, 4 points, and we will be building a new 300-key Sheraton next door to the Golf Hotel. So we're very excited about this opportunity.
Okay, thank you. I want to leave time for questions, but I do want to talk about Lagos. Thomas showed some figures there, that occupancies were fairly stable until 2014, which is when we started to fall off our cliff, even though we had quite a high supply in 2013. What has not happened in Lagos is oversupply. It's purely external factors which kept hitting us. Ebola, oil price crash, currency, problems with government, and the average rate has gone down. Very interestingly, is reading behind those numbers is that the vast majority of hotel room nights are sold in local currency. Okay, they're not sold in dollars. That's why in dollar terms the rate has crashed. Thomas said, 3-4 years ago, we were saying, wow, Lagos is yet again at the highest bar at the end of the chart. Now it was quite low at the bottom. what are we doing about Lagos? Lagos, Nigeria is just coming out of a very bad recession. Growth is, at the moment, tepid. What do you see as the future in Lagos? Again, Michael, I know you've been there. What's your perception of this incredible market?
With South Africa, Nigeria, it's 50% of the GDP for the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. So it's a market you can't ignore. It's a market that will come back. We've got a strong pipeline in Nigeria. Pleased to say that Lagos will be opening in January at the airport. The Legend Hotel Curio. Yeah, and it's one of 6 hotels we're opening in the next 6 months.
Right.
But very pleased to be opening in Lagos. It's a gap we've had for some time.
So no doubts in your mind about Lagos, about Nigeria?
Not at all. I think there's a potential to put multiple hotels and multiple brands.
Right. Andrew, you've been going backwards and forwards for many years. What's your view at the moment?
No, I think Lagos is still one of the key sort of tier 1 cities in Africa. I think you'd be crazy to ignore Lagos. I think that if you understand Nigeria and you've been going in and out of Nigeria, it's only a matter of time. It's turned the corner. You can actually feel it when you're in Nigeria.
But you've been through this whole currency thing, and the fact is that we build in dollars at the same price as we used to build in 3 years ago. But our average rate is half in dollars what it was. Are you finding there's problems in terms of making deals, making projects stack up?
What has happened is that you're able to sort of still design a bit smarter. You're being a little bit more flexible in your design. Some of the overall areas are shrinking. So a hotel that used to be 20,000 square meters, you're trying to pack the same facilities into 16,000 sort of square meters as well. Lagos is an opportunity to bring sort of mid-scale brands into the market as well. So you're not necessarily going for your 5-star sort of products as well. And for us, we think that there's still a lot of opportunity in Lagos. If you look at the branded supply in Lagos, you look at the population of Lagos, the airlift's still going into Lagos. There's still a lot of opportunity in the country in the short and medium term. And it's actually now's the time to be getting back into Lagos.
Okay. Paul, you're, now that you've taken on Starwood, you're the largest hotelier in terms of number of rooms in Nigeria. I think you've got 5. Oh no, it's more than that. Starwood had 5 hotels. You've got quite a few Proteas as well. What's your view? I mean, you're from the region, so maybe you have a different view. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I think for us, just like has been said, you can't kind of turn away from the numbers, whether it's GDP, whether it's population, whether it's just the prospects for the youth kind of dominating the cities. You realize that there's a unique opportunity in the making. Now, of course, as you said, we've been through a very difficult period. Once again, this year we've been fortunate enough, we signed 2 hotels, the Renaissance and the Marriott Executive Apartments, with a very strong partner. And I think that's a crucial component. You need to find the right partner that knows how to be resourceful along with you. So I spoke to this owner about why they are moving now. And same thing, long-term view. And interesting enough, in tough times, this is the time to sow. Maybe I'm letting a little bit of a cat out of the bag, but if you negotiate in tough times, there is a squeeze. There's no question. You talked about the FX spread. There is a squeeze, and so something's got to give. And I think all parties being resourceful come to the party to share some of that pain now. And we all hope for good times to be back in Nigeria and in Lagos. And at that point, I think everyone will be happy.
Well, that's also, I think it was Alex Kyriakidis said this morning, that you're looking at mid-scale and economy.
Absolutely.
And that is where you can better juggle the average room rate and the per unit cost. I'm running out of time, but I do really want to see if there are any questions. Any quick questions for the panel? Oh. Anybody want to talk about Equatorial Guinea? Or?
Test our geography.
No,
the
I've been there.
Okay.
I think people are hungry, Trevor.
Okay. I can't see, I've got a bright light in my, so I can't necessarily see any hands go up, but I don't think there are any. Okay then, we're going to finish in about a minute's time. Now let's see if I can get the panelists to behave, because normally they answer a different question. There's one city in your mind that you want to do a deal in. Just give me one city where you want to do a deal.
Before I read the press this morning, I would have said Abidjan, but I'll say Douala now.
Douala. Thank you.
Dar es Salaam.
Dar es Salaam.
Maputo.
Maputo.
And let me just qualify this.
No, Paul.
Okay.
No, Paul.
All right, when I mention the city, you'll know why I want to qualify. I would say Luanda.
Luanda.
Yeah.
Okay. So Luanda, Maputo, Dar es Salaam. I've forgotten yours already.
And I want to make it
Douala.
to the top 10 chart.
Douala,
for
the
next-
Douala,
commercial
okay.
capital.
Also, I want to make it to the top 10 chart for next year. I didn't like the fact that
You want to be on the
our
chart
company
next
was
year.
not there.
Do you know how much it costs to bribe me?
Yeah, I know.
With that, thank you very much, Paul, Philippe, Andrew,
Thank you.
and Mike. Thank you very much.
Trevor.